The ocean churned beneath the USS Argent like a living thing. White-capped waves crashing against the carrier's hull as the wind howled across the flight deck. Lieutenant Commander Maya Foster stood at the edge of the flight line, the salt spray stinging her face as she surveyed the organized chaos of pre-mission preparations. By 0500, the deck crew was already in full motion, their movements precise despite the challenging conditions. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Smart sailors stayed below deck during weather like this, huddled in the relative comfort of the carrier's interior, waiting for better conditions. Maya wasn't most sailors. She walked across the non-skid surface with a quiet confidence born from years of knowing exactly where she belonged, even when others questioned her presence. No insignia marked her as special operations. No visible patches announced her status, just well-worn tactical boots that had seen actual combat, utilities that fit like they'd been lived in, and a simple ponytail that revealed the tan line where tactical eyewear usually rested. Everything about her seemed understated, ordinary even, except for the way she moved. There was something deliberate about her stride, economical and precise, like someone who'd learned that wasted motion could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The deck officer barely glanced up from his clipboard, just waved her through with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been on shift since midnight. Maya nodded once and kept moving, her small duffel bag slung over one shoulder, mission brief tucked securely in her cargo pocket. She'd been awake since 0300, sitting on the edge of her rack in the officer's quarters, surrounded by the sounds of a carrier at war footing. Her gear bag had sat open on the small desk, contents organized with military precision that had become second nature after enough deployments. Equipment checked and double-checked, communications devices secured, and at the bottom, wrapped in a faded bandana, a photograph she hadn't looked at in 6 months. She pulled it out that morning, held it up to the dim light of her desk lamp, and made herself remember. 3 figures on a beach somewhere in the Persian Gulf, sand dunes stretching in the background. Her in the middle, tactical vest still on, flanked by her spotter and her communications specialist. All of them exhausted, but victorious. All of them young enough to think they were untouchable. The spotter had made it home, got out, started a security firm in Texas. According to his occasional emails, he coached his daughter's soccer team now and had never been happier. The communications specialist never made it home from their last mission. An ambush took her out in a province whose name Maya still couldn't say without her throat tightening. Her brother was graduating from BUDS training next month. Had his sister's determination and her sister's uncanny ability to keep a team connected under the most challenging conditions. And absolutely no idea that Lieutenant Commander Maya Foster existed. Maya had promised herself she'd complete one final mission before his graduation ceremony. Not for recognition, not for some kind of closure that therapists talked about in those mandatory sessions, but just to prove to herself that she could still execute flawlessly without falling apart. Inside the mission briefing room, the air conditioning fought a losing battle against the humidity. 2 SEAL team commanders lounged against the wall, one wearing tactical sunglasses indoors like it was standard procedure, the other scrolling through his tablet with the intensity of someone reviewing critical intelligence. "Can I help you?" Sunglasses guy looked up, his tone carrying that particular brand of skepticism that said he'd already decided she didn't belong there before she'd even opened her mouth. Maya stopped in front of him, her posture straight but not rigid. "Lieutenant Commander Maya Foster, I have temporary assignment orders for the upcoming operation." She pulled out her paperwork, unfolded it once, and presented it with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Tablet guy looked her over like she was an unexpected variable in his carefully planned equation. His eyes taking in her unmarked utilities, the lack of team insignia, the way she stood there waiting patiently for them to acknowledge her orders. "You want to what now?" he asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Join your infiltration team," she repeated, her voice level as polished steel. Orders signed by Admiral Parker himself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The two SEALs exchanged glances, and Maya caught the look that passed between them. It was the same look she'd seen 1,000 times before in a dozen different contexts from people who thought they knew her capabilities based on what they could see on the surface. Sunglasses Guy picked up her paperwork and scanned it with the theatrical attention of someone looking for any reason to reject it, then dropped it back on the table like it was contaminated. "Yeah, I see the orders," he drawled, leaning back against the wall with the kind of casual arrogance that came from being part of an elite unit. "Here's the thing, Commander. We're running a tight operation here. No room for tourists." "The authorization is signed by Admiral Parker," Maya said quietly, not moving from her position. "Don't care if it's signed by the Joint Chiefs themselves." Tablet Guy chimed in, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been running these kinds of operations for years and thought that made him the final word. "This isn't a ride-along opportunity. We operate as a unit with established protocols and communications procedures. You'd be a liability." Maya didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't even flinch. She simply picked up her paperwork, folded it once, and stepped back toward a metal chair position where she could observe the mission planning board in the center of the room. "You can wait all you want," Sunglasses Guy called after her, his voice carrying that particular smugness. That comes from winning a confrontation he didn't even know was happening. "Answer's still going to be no." She sat down, placed her bag at her feet, and folded her hands in her lap. From where she sat, she could see the mission map showing their target area, an isolated coastal region shimmering under the projection lights. The two SEALs returned to their planning, shaking their heads and muttering about administrative overreach, and desk jockeys who thought they could just parachute into operational teams. Some people watch a few war movies and think they're qualified for Spec Ops, one of them muttered loud enough for her to hear. Maya closed her eyes and let the sounds wash over her. The hum of the ship's engines through the bulkheads, the occasional radio chatter from the CUM station, the steady rhythm of a carrier at war footing. Sounds that had been the soundtrack to half her adult life. Sounds that still lived in her dreams, both the good ones and the ones that woke her up in cold sweats. The minutes ticked by slowly in the humid air. Every so often, one of the SEALs would glance her way and shake his head like she was a problem that would eventually solve itself if they just ignored her long enough. Maya sat perfectly still, her breathing controlled and measured. Her patience was the kind that came from spending days in a hide site, where the slightest movement could compromise the entire mission. A young intelligence analyst walked in, carrying a stack of updated satellite imagery. She looked at Maya with curious eyes, taking in the stillness. The way someone could sit in the stuffy briefing room without checking her phone or fidgeting with her gear. "Ma'am," the analyst said, slowing her pace, "can I get you anything?" Maya opened her eyes and simply shook her head. The analyst nodded and continued to the planning table, but she looked back twice before focusing on her work. Something about the way Maya sat there perfectly still in the uncomfortable chair reminded her of her uncle. Old Special Forces operators had that same quality. They could wait forever if they had to, and they never seemed to doubt that their patience would eventually be rewarded. Inside the briefing room, the mission planning continued, and Maya Foster waited. She'd made a promise to someone who couldn't keep their promise to come home, and she intended to see it through, no matter how long it took, or how many people thought she didn't belong there. In the adjacent command center, the morning's operational team was getting a final intelligence update. The ship's air conditioning system hummed overhead, fighting the humidity that seemed to seep through every seam and joint. Folding chairs were arranged in tight rows facing a large digital display showing satellite imagery, weather forecasts, and operational timelines that had been refined over the past 72 hours. The same two SEALs who had dismissed Maya were briefing their team near the communication station, describing the critical elements of the upcoming mission to the assembled operators. "I'm telling you," Tablaguy was saying, gesturing at the PO. "Coastal insertion point on the map. This is the most straightforward approach vector, but the window is tight. Tide conditions will only give us a 20-minute margin." The team of operators nodded, their faces showing the focused attention of professionals preparing for a high-risk mission. Their unit patches were worn and faded, not for show but from actual field operations, and their confidence was the quiet kind that came from proven capability rather than bravado. "What about our new addition?" asked one, a senior chief with weathered features and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen it all. The orders mentioned temporary support personnel. "Administrative error," Sunglasses Guy replied, shaking his head with theatrical weariness. "I pulled her file when the orders came through. It's, interesting." "Interesting how?" the senior chief asked, his attention shifting. "Most of it's redacted," the comms officer replied. "And I mean heavily redacted. Not the usual kind of administrative redactions either. These are high-level security compartments I don't even have access to. Probably worked intelligence analysis for some sensitive desk operation," Sunglasses Guy suggested with a dismissive wave. "Maybe," the comms officer said, not sounding convinced. "But people don't get that kind of security compartmentalization for pushing papers. And her hands, what about her hands?" the senior chief asked. "They're scarred up. The kind of calluses and marks you get from years of weapons handling and field operations, not from typing reports." The conversation shifted as the ship's captain entered the room. He moved with the kind of quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself, the way senior commanders learn to walk after enough years of being the person everyone looked to when operations went critical. Captain James Harlow was 52 years old and had been running naval special warfare support operations since before some of these SEALs were out of high school. He'd commanded vessels in 3 different conflict zones, supported insertions from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, and managed missions that didn't appear in any official naval record. His uniform was impeccable without being fussy, worn by someone who understood that standards mattered. His face carried the weathered look of someone who'd spent serious time making difficult decisions at sea, and his eyes held the kind of depth that came from being responsible for both mission success and the lives of his sailors. He'd come to the command center for the final mission briefing, the kind of hands-on leadership that kept operations running smoothly and teams performing at their peak. But what he was hearing about the temporary assignment officer wasn't what he'd expected. "I'm just saying," one of the junior SEALs was explaining to the others, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd never had his assumptions seriously challenged. "If you want to play in the big leagues, earn your trident first. Don't show up with paperwork and expect to be welcomed." Captain Harlow stopped walking, turned toward the voices, and listened. "She's probably some political appointment," another team member added, his words drawing nods from his peers. "Someone's pushing diversity initiatives again. Or maybe she's collecting material for some after-action report," Sunglasses Guy suggested, his voice dripping with disdain. "Naval Intelligence Observer evaluates special operations effectiveness. Looks great in a personnel file." The conversation that followed had an edge to it, the kind that turned from professional skepticism to unwarranted judgment without anyone noticing the transition. Captain Harlow had heard enough. He'd spent enough years in the Navy to recognize the sound of operators who thought they knew everything about someone they'd never bothered to properly evaluate. He turned and walked back out of the command center, leaving the briefing room to its assumptions. He had a feeling those assumptions were about to be corrected in a very educational manner. The humidity hit him like a wet blanket as he stepped into the corridor. Even after all these years on naval vessels, the microclimate of a carrier at sea still reminded you that you were essentially living in a floating steel city surrounded by water. He pulled his cap on and started walking toward the briefing room where Maya waited, his footsteps echoing on the metal deck plates. That's when he saw her, exactly where the SEALs had said she'd be, sitting in a metal chair at the edge of the planning area. But seeing her in person, Harlow understood immediately why the operators had gotten it so wrong. They were looking at her lack of team insignia, her absence from their training cycles, her unexpected appearance. They weren't looking at her. She sat with perfect stillness, back straight, but not rigid, hands folded but ready to move. Her breathing was controlled, economical. She wasn't fidgeting with impatience or checking her watch or showing any sign of the restless energy that defined most people her age. She was a study in controlled patience, the kind you learned in environments where moving at the wrong time could get you killed. Harlow had seen that stillness before. In forward observers calling in precision strikes, in reconnaissance specialists operating deep behind enemy lines, in operators who'd learned that survival sometimes meant becoming invisible until the exact moment action was required. As he got closer, she turned her head slightly, acknowledging his approach without breaking her composure. That's when he saw it. Behind her right ear, where her pulled-back hair revealed the line of her jaw, was a tattoo. Small, precise, done in black ink that had faded slightly with age. It wasn't decorative or artistic. It was functional, a mark, used by certain special operations units for identification when conventional methods weren't possible. Harlow's breath caught in his throat. The design was simple but unmistakable, a stylized number 9 with ghostly wings spreading outward. No bigger than a quarter. Below it, in numbers so small they were almost invisible, he could make out a date and a location code. But what made Harlow's blood run cold was the additional mark below the numbers, a tiny horizontal line with 3 vertical marks crossing through it. Ghost 9. The designation hit Harlow like a physical blow. Ghost 9, the call sign belonging to a maritime special operations team, so classified that most admirals didn't know it existed. A unit that specialized in the kind of operations that couldn't be acknowledged even decades later. The kind of unit whose members' service records were sealed at the highest levels of national security. "Ma'am," Harlow said quietly, his voice carrying the respect that came from recognizing someone who'd operated in places most people couldn't even imagine. Maya looked up at him with clear gray eyes that held depths he couldn't read. There was something in her gaze that reminded him of deep water calm on the surface with currents running underneath that could pull you under if you weren't careful. "Captain," she replied, her voice neutral but not dismissive. She'd clearly identified him as the ship's commanding officer from 50 feet away, probably from his bearing more than his insignia. "I couldn't help but notice your ink." He kept his voice low, conversational. "That's some very specific artwork." She didn't flinch, didn't try to cover it up, didn't deflect with humor or false modesty. Most people would have made some joke about youthful indiscretions or misguided choices. Maya just looked at him with those steady gray eyes and said nothing. "It is," she finally replied, offering neither explanation nor apology. "Mind if I ask where you got it?" Harlow continued. Maya studied his face for a long moment, reading things in his posture and bearing that the SEALs had completely missed. She was cataloging details, the way he held himself, the particular shade of his weathering around his eyes, the unconscious authority in his stance, all the little tells that separated people who understood the shadow world from people who only glimpsed its edges. Then she spoke 2 words that confirmed everything Harlow suspected and feared. Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, the strategically critical waterway where a specialized maritime unit had run operations so classified They were known only to a handful of people with the highest clearances, where operators conducted missions that couldn't be acknowledged and completed objectives that couldn't be celebrated, where the line between success and catastrophic international incidents was measured in seconds and split-second decisions. Harlow felt something shift in his chest, a combination of respect, recognition, and the sudden understanding that he was looking at someone whose existence was officially denied by 3 different government agencies. "What's your call sign?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Ghost 9. The name hit him like a physical blow. Ghost 9, the maritime infiltration specialist who'd conducted the impossible insertion during Operation Silent Tide, who'd extracted a compromised intelligence team from a hostile port that satellite imagery said was impenetrable, who'd disappeared from all records after a mission that was too successful to acknowledge and too politically sensitive to commemorate. The SEAL team gathered around the map as Maya outlined the modified approach. She didn't dominate the conversation or try to take over the planning process. Instead, she offered specific, targeted adjustments that leveraged her unique knowledge, while respecting the team's existing operational framework. As the planning session continued, the initial resistance to her presence faded, replaced by a growing professional respect. These were elite operators, trained to recognize and value genuine expertise. And it was becoming increasingly clear that Maya Foster possessed expertise that went beyond anything in their experience. When she described the underwater approach to the target beach, explaining the complex interplay of currents and underwater features, she spoke with the authority of someone who had navigated those waters in complete darkness, relying on feel and instinct rather than technology. When she pointed out vulnerabilities in the coastal surveillance network, identifying blind spots and sensor limitations, she did so with the precision of someone who had exploited those same weaknesses on previous operations. And when she suggested modifications to their communications protocols, enhancing security without sacrificing operational tempo, she demonstrated a depth of technical knowledge that impressed even the team's communications specialist. By the time the planning session concluded, the atmosphere in the command center had transformed completely. Where there had been skepticism and dismissal, there was now a grudging respect. Not friendship or easy camaraderie. Maya wasn't there to make friends, but the professional acknowledgement that comes from recognizing genuine capability. As the team dispersed to prepare their equipment for the mission, Captain Harlow watched from the doorway with quiet satisfaction. He'd seen this pattern before: the initial resistance to an outsider, followed by the gradual recognition of value, culminating in a new operational equilibrium. But he'd never seen it happen so quickly or so completely. Maya Foster had earned her place on this mission, not by invoking her authority or her classified background, but by demonstrating her value in the currency that mattered most to special operators: knowledge and competence. She stood at the mission planning table, making final notes on the operational timeline, her focus absolute. This wasn't someone playing at special operations or trying to prove a point. This was someone doing what she was born to do, in the environment where she belonged. And as the preparations for the mission continued around her, Harlow found himself wondering about the promise she'd mentioned. What obligation could be powerful enough to bring Ghost 9 out of the shadows and back into operational status? Who was she keeping faith with, and at what cost? The mission clock continued its relentless countdown on the main display, and with each passing minute, the team moved closer to deployment. Maya integrated herself into their preparations with minimal disruption, finding her place in their operational rhythm with the adaptive skill of someone who'd learned to work with dozens of different units in dozens of different environments. The equipment check proceeded with the methodical precision that characterized all special operations preparations. Every piece of gear inspected, every system tested, every contingency planned for and rehearsed. There was no room for error in the kind of mission they were about to undertake. As dusk settled over the carrier, The mission preparations entered their final phase. The command center had transformed from a planning hub to an operational nerve center, screens displaying real-time intelligence updates and meteorological data that would impact the upcoming insertion. Maya stood at the equipment station, methodically checking her gear with the practiced efficiency of someone who trusted their life to their equipment. Her dive suit was a matte black tactical model with integrated thermal protection, designed for extended immersion in cold water. Unlike the standard issue gear the SEAL team used, hers showed subtle modifications, reinforced seams in critical stress areas, custom knife sheaths positioned for ambidextrous access, and an integrated rebreather system that left almost no surface bubble trail. The senior chief, a weathered operator named Sullivan with 20 years of special operations experience, paused beside her workstation. "That's not standard issue," he observed, nodding toward her equipment. "No," Maya agreed without looking up. "It's not." Sullivan studied her gear with professional curiosity. "Those modifications to the rebreather, they're from the Phantom program, aren't they? I thought that tech was still in development." Maya's hands never stopped moving through her equipment check. "It was," she said simply. Understanding dawned in Sullivan's eyes. The Phantom program was a classified maritime infiltration technology that had been rumored among special operations communities for years, supposedly allowing operators to remain submerged for unprecedented durations with minimal detection signatures. If Maya had access to that technology, it confirmed everything Captain Harlow had implied about her background. "Mind if I ask where you trained?" Sullivan's question was careful, professional curiosity rather than the earlier skepticism. Maya paused in her preparations, weighing how much to reveal. "Started with standard Navy diving school, then specialized training." Sullivan nodded, reading between the lines. "I had a buddy who went into a specialized program back in '09, never talked about it, but he came back different. Moved through water like he was born in it." He hesitated, then added, "Last I heard, he was assigned to something called maritime asset recovery. Said it wasn't what most people thought it was." Maya's eyes met his briefly, a flash of recognition passing between them. No further explanation was necessary. They both understood the euphemisms used to disguise the true nature of certain operations. "Your approach adjustment," Sullivan continued, changing the subject. "That reef structure you mentioned, I've never seen it on any charts." "It's not on charts," Maya replied, closing her equipment case. "It's a formation that developed after the last geological survey. Local fishermen know about it, but it hasn't made it into official hydrographic databases. And you know this." "How?" Sullivan asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "I've been there," she repeated, the same simple explanation she'd given earlier. Sullivan studied her face, reading the truth behind her words. "Recently?" Maya zipped her tactical gear bag closed. "Recently enough." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lieutenant Commander Reeves, the SEAL team leader, who had initially dismissed Maya's orders. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by a professional demeanor that acknowledged his misjudgment without explicitly addressing it. "Commander Foster," he began, "we've incorporated your input on the insertion vector. The team's been briefed on the changes." He hesitated, then added, "I owe you an apology for earlier. I made assumptions I shouldn't have." Maya nodded once, accepting the apology without dwelling on it. "Water under the bridge, Commander. Mission comes first." Reeves seemed relieved by her response. "We deploy in 90 minutes. Final briefing in 30. I'd like you to take point on the underwater navigation portion, if you're willing. Your familiarity with the terrain is an asset we should leverage." "Of course," Maya agreed, her focus already shifting to the operational requirements ahead. As Reeves departed to continue his pre-mission preparations, Sullivan lingered a moment longer. "The communications specialist you mentioned," he said quietly. "The one who didn't make it back. What was her name?" Maya's hands stilled on her equipment. For the first time since arriving on the carrier, her composure showed the smallest crack, a brief flash of something raw and painful before her professional mask slid back into place. "Lieutenant Sarah Ramirez," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "Finest comms specialist I ever worked with. Could maintain signal integrity in conditions that would shut down most military-grade systems." Sullivan nodded, understanding the weight of carrying the memory of fallen teammates. "Her brother, the one graduating from Bud A's, what's his name?" "Miguel," Maya replied. "Miguel Ramirez." Sarah said he could calculate trajectory corrections in his head faster than the ballistics computers. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. She was always trying to recruit him for our side of operations. The senior chief absorbed this information, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. "This mission, it's in the same region where she was lost, isn't it?" Maya didn't confirm or deny, but her silence was answer enough. "Commander," Sullivan said carefully, "we've all made promises to the ones who didn't come back. But sometimes, this isn't about closure," Maya interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "It's about finishing what we started." Sarah believed in the mission's importance. She died believing that. "I need to make sure it wasn't for nothing." Sullivan recognized the nays, determination in her voice, the unshakable commitment that defined the finest operators he'd ever served with. He nodded. "Once, respecting both her privacy and her purpose." "Well then," he said simply, "let's make damn sure we get it right." 30 minutes later, the final mission briefing commenced in the Secure Operations Center. The room was filled with the focused energy that preceded all high-risk operations, a combination of professional discipline and the natural tension that came from confronting known dangers. Captain Harlow observed from the back of the room as Lieutenant Commander Reeves led the briefing, outlining the mission parameters and objectives with the precise clarity expected of special operations. Leadership. "Our primary objective remains unchanged," Reeves explained, indicating the target facility on the displayed satellite imagery. "Intelligence extraction from the coastal research installation, with secondary objective to place surveillance devices at these 3 locations." The highlighted points flashed on the screen key, infrastructure nodes that would provide ongoing intelligence even after the team's extraction. "What has changed," Reeves continued, "is our insertion methodology." He nodded toward Maya, who stood and took position at the tactical display. "Based on updated hydrographic intelligence," she began, careful not to reveal the true source of her information, "we've identified a more secure approach vector that minimizes our exposure to coastal surveillance." She highlighted the new route on the display, tracing the underwater path that would take the team from their drop point to the target beach. "The challenge," she continued, "is navigating this section here." She zoomed in on a complex underwater terrain feature. The channel is narrow, with strong lateral currents during tidal shift. Standard navigation systems won't provide the necessary precision, so we'll need to navigate by physical landmarks and compass bearings. She proceeded to outline a series of underwater navigation points, describing submerged features with the intimate familiarity of someone who had personally memorized every rock and contour. "Questions?" she asked when she'd finished. A junior SEAL raised his hand. "Commander, you're describing navigation points that aren't on our charts or sonar surveys. How can we be confident they're accurate?" It was a fair question, asked without the earlier skepticism, but with the legitimate concern of someone whose life would depend on this information. "Because I've navigated them personally," Maya replied. "Multiple times, under various conditions. The seafloor features in this region are remarkably stable due to the underlying geological formation." She turned to the tactical display and made a series of adjustments, bringing up a 3-dimensional model of the underwater approach. I've updated the simulation with the actual terrain features you'll encounter. We'll run through it twice before deployment to ensure everyone is familiar with the key navigation points. The team watched as she manipulated the simulation, creating a virtual flithrow of the underwater terrain they would navigate. The level of detail was extraordinary, far beyond what standard hydrographic surveys could provide. That's not standard mapping, the team's intelligence officer observed. That level of detail would require direct observation and mapping, Maya finished for him. Yes, the implication hung in the air. Maya had not only been to this location before, she had spent enough time there to create a detailed underwater map of terrain features that didn't appear on any official charts. Whatever operations Ghost 9 had conducted in this region, they had been extensive and meticulous. We'll navigate in teams of 2, she continued, moving past the moment. I'll take point with Senior Chief Sullivan, followed by Reeves and Chun, then the remaining teams at 5-meter intervals. Maintain physical or tether contact at all times. Visibility will be near zero at our operational depth. The briefing continued, covering communications protocols, contingency plans, and extraction procedures. Throughout it all, Maya's contributions revealed a depth of knowledge about the operational area that transformed the mission parameters. What had been a high-risk insertion with significant unknowns was becoming a precisely planned operation with clearly identified challenges and mitigation strategies. When the briefing concluded, the team dispersed to make final preparations. Maya remained at the tactical display, making small adjustments to the simulation, refining details that only she would notice, but that might make the difference between success and failure. Captain Harlow approached as she worked. "That's quite a simulation," he observed. "Not the kind of detail we usually have for denied areas." Maya didn't look up from her work. "The Ghost program believed in thorough reconnaissance, sir." "Ghost program," Harlow repeated the words carefully. "I've heard rumors, of course. Specialized maritime operators who could infiltrate anywhere, anytime, regardless of defenses or detection systems." He paused. "Never thought I'd meet one in person." Maya finally looked up from the display. "Most don't," she said simply. "Lieutenant Ramirez," Harlow said quietly. "She was Ghost 9 before you?" A shadow crossed Maya's face. "She was my communications specialist. We operated as a team with our spotter, Lieutenant Commander Wilson. And this mission, it's related to the one where she was lost?" Maya's expression revealed nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Commander," Harlow said carefully, "I need to know if this is a sanctioned operation or a personal vendetta." "I can't authorize. It's sanctioned at the highest levels," Maya interrupted, her voice level. "The Admiral's authorization was genuine. What I didn't specify was that this mission is the completion of an operation that was interrupted 3 years ago, an operation that nearly succeeded despite a catastrophic compromise." She turned to face Harlow directly. "We identified a critical intelligence node, but we lost Sarah before we could complete the extraction. The intelligence is still there, still valuable, and still accessible with the right approach. And Sarah's brother? How does he fit into this?" Maya's composure wavered slightly. "He deserves to know his sister's sacrifice meant something, that it contributed to something important." She paused, then added more quietly, "And I promised her I'd finish what we started." Harlow studied her face, looking for signs of the obsession or vengeance that sometimes drove operators who'd lost teammates. What he saw instead was the clear-eyed determination of a professional who understood both the mission parameters and the personal cost. "Very well, Commander," he said finally. "Complete your mission, but bring my people home safely." "That's always the priority, sir," Maya replied, turning back to her preparations. As the deployment time approached, the team gathered in the equipment bay, performing final checks on their gear and reviewing key mission parameters. The atmosphere had changed significantly since Maya's arrival. The initial skepticism replaced by professional focus and a growing respect for her capabilities. Maya worked methodically through her pre-dive checklist, each movement precise and economical. Her dive gear incorporated elements that weren't standard, issue specialized equipment developed for the Ghost program and refined through years of operational experience. Senior Chief Sullivan approached as she completed her preparations. "Teams ready," he reported. "Everyone's briefed on the navigation points and communication protocols." Maya nodded, securing her tactical harness. "Any concerns?" "Just the usual pre-mission jitters," Sullivan replied with a tight smile. "Chun's on his first operational deployment. Solid in training, but untested under fire." "Keep him center formation," Maya suggested. "Protected position, but with enough responsibility to stay engaged." Sullivan nodded, appreciating her tactical instinct. "Already done." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the young intelligence analyst who had offered Maya assistance earlier. She carried a secured tablet displaying the latest satellite imagery of their target area. "Commander Foster," she began, her voice professional despite her obvious admiration, "we've received updated surveillance from our overhead assets. No significant changes to the target environment, but there's increased patrol activity along the northern perimeter." Maya examined the imagery carefully. "Schedule a response." The analyst looked momentarily confused. "Is it a scheduled security rotation?" Maya clarified. "Or a response to something specific?" Understanding dawned in the analyst's eyes. "Scheduled. It follows the pattern we've observed over the past 72 hours. Maya nodded, satisfied with the assessment. "Good work. Keep monitoring and alert us to any deviations from established patterns." The analyst straightened almost imperceptibly at the praise. "Yes, ma'am." As she departed, Sullivan watched her with an amused expression. "I think you've got a fan, Commander." Maya continued her equipment check without responding. "She reminds me of Sarah," Sullivan observed casually. "That same intensity, that determination to prove herself." Maya's hands stilled momentarily. "Sarah was one of a kind," she said quietly. "We all are," Sullivan replied. "Doesn't mean we can't see echoes of ourselves in others." He hesitated, then added, "Sarah's brother, you think he has what it takes to follow in her footsteps?" "He has his own path," Maya replied, resuming her preparations. "But yes, he has what it takes. Sarah made sure of that." The deployment alert sounded a subtle change in the ship's PA system that would go unnoticed by most of the crew, but signaled the beginning of the mission countdown for the Special Operations Team. Lieutenant Commander Reeves approached, his game face on. 30 minutes to deployment. Transports prepped and ready. The team moved with practiced efficiency, gathering their gear and proceeding to the deployment bay where a specially modified rigid-hull inflatable boat waited to take them to their drop point. Each operator carried enough equipment for the mission and its contingencies, their movements unencumbered despite the weight, the result of countless training hours and operational deployments. Maya took her position in the lead boat, her presence now accepted without question. In the space of a few hours, she had transformed from an unwelcome outsider to an essential mission component, her knowledge and experience recognized as critical assets by the same operators who had initially dismissed her. As the deployment bay doors opened to reveal the darkening ocean beyond, Captain Harlow's voice came over the team's secure communication channel. "Operators, this is Argent Actual. Weather conditions optimal, sea state manageable. You have green light for full mission profile. Execute with precision, return intact." "Copy that, Argent Actual," Reeves responded. "Executing as planned." The boats were lowered into the water with minimal noise, their specialized engines designed for stealth operations barely audible above the natural sounds of the ocean. As they pulled away from the carrier's shadow, Maya felt the familiar tension that preceded every mission, not fear, but the heightened awareness that came from knowing every decision could have life or death consequences. They moved through the darkness, maintaining strict emissions control, navigating by starlight and specialized night vision systems. The target coastline was invisible at this distance, but Maya could picture it clearly: every beach contour, every underwater obstacle, every approach vector burned into her memory from previous operations. Somewhere on that shore was the intelligence that Sarah had died trying to secure information vital enough that the highest levels of command had authorized a return mission despite the risks. And Maya was determined to complete what they had started, to ensure that Sarah's sacrifice had meaning beyond a redacted after-action report and a classified memorial service. As they approached the drop point, Reeves signaled for final preparations. The team performed last-minute equipment checks, synchronized their diving computers, and prepared to enter the water. Maya caught Sullivan's eye across the boat. The senior chief gave her a single nod, the quiet acknowledgement between professionals who understood both the mission and its personal significance. Then, on Reeves' signal, they slipped into the dark water and disappeared beneath the surface, beginning the long underwater journey toward a shore that didn't welcome visitors and a mission that offered no guarantees. The darkness beneath the waves was absolute, a void broken only by the subtle green glow of luminescent markers on each team member's gear. Maya led the formation, her movements fluid and precise as she navigated through water that held no visible reference points for most divers. But Maya wasn't most divers. She moved with the intuitive understanding of someone who had spent more time underwater than many people spent at their desk jobs. Behind her, Sullivan maintained a professional distance, close enough for communication, but far enough to avoid entanglement. The senior chief had adapted quickly to her pace and style, his decades of experience evident in the economy of his movements and his perfect buoyancy control. Maya checked her specialized diving computer, confirming their position against the mental map she carried. The coastline was still 2 kilometers away, but the underwater terrain was already changing, the featureless sandy bottom giving way to the complex reef structures that marked the approach to their target. She signaled the team to adjust their depth, dropping closer to the seafloor where the currents were more predictable. In the green-tinged darkness, hand signals took on heightened importance, each gesture precise and unmistakable, communicating essential information without ambiguity. The first navigation checkpoint appeared exactly where Maya had said it would, an unusual coral formation that resembled a massive antler rising from the seafloor like a silent sentinel. She signaled confirmation to Sullivan, who relayed it back through the team formation. The unspoken message was clear. Her intelligence was solid, her memory precise. They continued forward, moving with the current rather than fighting it, conserving energy for the challenges ahead. Maya set a pace that balanced speed against a noise discipline, fast enough to meet their timeline but slow enough to maintain stealth. 20 minutes into their approach, they encountered the first major obstacle, the hidden reef structure Maya had warned about during the briefing. In the darkness, it was barely visible until they were almost upon it, a jagged barrier of coral and rock that would have torn through standard diving equipment and left a trail of bubbles marking their position. Maya led them to the narrow channel she had identified, a passage barely 3 meters wide that cut through the reef like a hidden doorway. The current accelerated as it funneled through the constricted space, creating a powerful flow that threatened to push them off course. She tapped Sullivan's shoulder and pointed to a specific handhold on the reef edge, a natural feature that provided an anchor point against the current. One by one, the team used it to pull themselves through the channel, fighting against water pressure that would have exhausted lesser divers. Chun, the junior SEAL on his first operational deployment, struggled momentarily, his oversized gear bag catching on a coral outcropping. Sullivan immediately moved to assist, freeing the entanglement with practiced efficiency. then guiding the younger operator through the passage. No recrimination, no wasted motion, just the seamless teamwork that defined elite units. Beyond the reef, the underwater landscape opened into a sandy approach that sloped gradually toward the shore. Maya signaled the team to hold position while she conducted a forward reconnaissance, her specialized gear allowing her to move faster and with greater stealth than the others. She glided through the water like a shadow, maintaining minimal profile. Her breathing controlled to produce almost no bubble trail. The specialized rebreather system recycled her exhaled air, leaving virtually no trace of her passage technology that the Ghost program had pioneered and perfected through years of clandestine operations. Approaching the shoreline perimeter, Maya activated her passive sonar system, detecting the subtle electronic signatures of underwater detection equipment. The coastal facility's defenses were sophisticated but predictable standard pattern coverage with overlapping fields designed to detect conventional underwater approaches. Maya had encountered similar systems before, had learned their weaknesses and blind spots through painstaking trial and error. She identified a gap in the coverage, not a technical failure, but a deliberate design choice based on the assumption that no diver could navigate the treacherous underwater terrain that guarded that particular approach. It was an assumption that might have been valid for most operators, but not for someone trained in the Ghost program, not for someone who had spent years perfecting the art of impossible infiltrations. She returned to the team and outlined the approach using underwater communication, tablet-specialized equipment that allowed limited text messaging without acoustic signatures. The plan was straightforward, but demanded precise execution. They would move through a narrow corridor between detection fields, timing their approach to coincide with a scheduled system diagnostic that created a momentary blind spot. The team acknowledged the plan with minimal communication professionals who understood both the requirements and the consequences of failure. Maya took point again, leading them through water that grew increasingly shallow as they neared the shore. The final approach required them to navigate between submerged rocks that could tear equipment and compromise the mission before it began. Maya moved with absolute certainty, finding passages that seemed invisible until you were directly upon them, guiding the team through an underwater maze that would have been impassable without her intimate knowledge of the terrain. As they reached the designated emergence point, a small cove sheltered from both visual observation and electronic surveillance, Maya signaled for the final equipment check. Each operator verified their gear was intact and operational, ensuring nothing had been damaged or lost during the challenging underwater journey. The team surfaced in sequence, emerging from the water with minimal disturbance, their specialized equipment designed to eliminate the telltale sounds that often compromised amphibious operations. Maya was first out of the water, scanning the shoreline with thermal imaging that penetrated the darkness far more effectively than standard night vision. The beach was clear, just as the intelligence had indicated. She signaled the all clear, and the team moved onto the shore with practiced efficiency, securing their diving equipment in specialized containers designed to eliminate any evidence of their approach. Sullivan appeared at her side as she studied the terrain ahead. "Impressive navigation," he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the gentle surf. "That reef passage wasn't on any chart I've ever seen." "That's the point," Maya replied, checking her tactical gear. "The best infiltration routes are the ones nobody knows exist." The team regrouped at the edge of the beach, transitioning from maritime operators to land-based infiltration specialists. Their movements were fluid and economical, the result of thousands of training hours and countless operational deployments. Lieutenant Commander Reeves joined them, his expression reflecting professional satisfaction with the insertion phase. "Clean approach, on timeline, no detection signatures," he confirmed. "Phase 1 complete." Maya nodded, already focused on the next challenge. The coastal research facility lay 2 kilometers inland, protected by multiple security layers designed to prevent exactly the kind of infiltration they were attempting. Movement plan unchanged, she confirmed. We use the dry riverbed for cover, approach from the southwest quadrant where the sensor coverage is thinnest. Reeves studied her face in the dim light. You're absolutely certain about the security layout? I am, Maya replied, her confidence absolute. 3 years ago, we mapped every sensor, every patrol route, every blind spot in their coverage. Some details might have changed, but the fundamental architecture remains the same. The team moved out in tactical formation, their progress silent and methodical. Maya set the pace, balancing speed against stealth, maintaining the delicate equilibrium that special operations required, fast enough to meet mission parameters, careful enough to avoid detection. The dry riverbed provided natural concealment, its banks high enough to shield them from casual observation. Maya led them along a path that minimized exposure to known observation points. Their route seemingly random to anyone without her specialized knowledge, but precisely calculated to exploit gaps in the security coverage. As they approached the facility's outer perimeter, Maya signaled for the team to hold position while she conducted a forward assessment. This was the most critical phase, the transition from approach to infiltration, the moment when most operations either succeeded or failed catastrophically. She moved ahead alone, her movements so fluid and precise that she seemed to disappear into the landscape. The specialized training of the Ghost program emphasized not just stealth techniques, but a fundamental reconceptualization of human movement, teaching operators to match their patterns to the natural environment, to become indistinguishable from the background noise that security systems were programmed to ignore. Maya reached the perimeter fence, a seemingly conventional barrier that concealed sophisticated detection systems, pressure sensors, vibration monitors, infrared triggers designed to activate under specific conditions. But like all security systems, it had weaknesses, not obvious vulnerabilities, but subtle design compromises that prioritize certain threats over others. She identified the access point, a maintenance junction where the electronic security mesh had been modified to accommodate service equipment. The modification created a minute variation in the sensor pattern, a discrepancy so slight that it would be invisible to anyone without her specialized training and equipment. Maya returned to the team and outlined the infiltration plan using hand signals and tactical diagrams drawn in the dirt. The team absorbed the information with professional focus, each operator understanding their specific role in the complex choreography that would follow. They moved toward the perimeter in staggered formation, maintaining communication through hand signals and tactical awareness. When they reached the fence, Maya demonstrated the precise approach required, a specific sequence of movements designed to exploit the sensor gap without triggering adjacent systems. One by one, the team members crossed the perimeter, their movements mirroring Maya's demonstration with professional precision. Chun, the junior operator, hesitated momentarily before his crossing, his inexperience showing in his slightly elevated breathing and tensed posture. Sullivan moved beside him, a steadying presence rather than an impatient supervisor. Focus on the technique, not the consequence, he advised quietly. Trust your training and follow the pattern exactly. The young SEAL nodded, composed himself, and executed the crossing perfectly, his movements fluid and precise, reflecting the countless training hours that prepared operators for exactly these scenarios. With the perimeter breached, the team regrouped in a sheltered position that provided both concealment and tactical observation of the main facility. The research complex rose before them, its architecture utilitarian and imposing, concrete and steel designed for function rather than aesthetics, windows minimal and heavily reinforced, access points limited and heavily monitored. Reeves studied the building layout, comparing it to the intelligence briefing materials. Security patterns consistent with intelligence assessment, he confirmed. Patrol intervals at 7 minutes, camera coverage as expected. Maya's focus was elsewhere, on a specific section of the facility that appeared unremarkable to casual observation, but represented the culmination of years of intelligence work. The northeastern wing, 3rd floor, contained the secure server room that housed the intelligence they had come to extract. "The approach is as briefed," she said, indicating the maintenance access route that provided their entry point. Service. Entrance on the eastern side. Minimal electronic surveillance due to interference from the building's own systems. Sullivan studied the facility with professional skepticism. "That looks too accessible," he observed. "Could be a deliberate vulnerability, a honeypot designed to detect infiltration attempts." "It's not," Maya replied with absolute certainty. 3 years ago, we identified it as a design oversight, a section where the security systems were compromised by electromagnetic interference from the research equipment. They compensate with increased physical security, double patrol coverage in that sector. "Which is why we're using the maintenance shift change window," Reeves added, grasping the strategy. 7-minute gap when the patrols are transitioning between shifts. Maya nodded, checking her tactical timepiece. "We move in 3 minutes. Primary objective is the server room. Extract the designated data package using the specialized equipment. Secondary objectives are the surveillance implants at the marked locations." The team performed final equipment checks, each operator verifying their specialized tools and weapons were ready for deployment. These weren't standard military issue, they were customized for this specific mission, designed to leave minimal evidence of their presence. As the designated moment approached, Maya felt the familiar clarity that preceded critical action, not the absence of fear, but its transformation into heightened awareness. This was the culmination of 3 years of planning, the opportunity to complete what Sarah had died trying to achieve, to ensure her sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The patrol passed their position right on schedule, the guards moving with the complacent efficiency of security personnel who had never encountered a genuine threat. As they disappeared around the corner, Maya signaled the team forward, leading them toward the maintenance entrance with swift, silent purpose. The access panel required specialized electronic manipulation, not brute force hacking, but subtle interference that mimicked authorized credentials. Maya deployed the custom device developed specifically for this purpose, watching as it cycled through authentication protocols until it found the precise signature required. The door opened with a subtle click, revealing the utilitarian interior of the maintenance corridor. Maya led the team inside, securing the entrance behind them to eliminate evidence of their passage. Inside, the facility hummed with the background noises of research equipment and environmental systems, sounds that provided natural cover for their movement. They proceeded through the maintenance corridors, avoiding the main hallways where security coverage was heaviest. Maya navigated with absolute confidence, her mental map of the facility guiding them through a labyrinth of service passages and utility rooms. When they reached the access point to the main facility, Maya paused, deploying a specialized sensor that detected the electronic signatures of security systems beyond the door. The readings confirmed her intelligence. The pattern was exactly as expected, with the predicted gap in coverage during the system's automatic recalibration cycle. 20 seconds, she whispered, watching the sensor readings fluctuate. On my mark. The team tensed, ready to move the instant she gave the signal. When the security system began its recalibration sequence, a brief window where the sensors reset to baseline Maya signaled the advance. They moved through the main facility with disciplined precision, their progress coordinated to exploit blind spots in the security coverage. Each operator knew exactly where to step, when to pause, how to position themselves to minimize detection. Risk. The server room was located on the 3rd floor, accessed through a secured corridor that represented the most heavily protected section of the facility. As they approached, Maya deployed specialized equipment designed to create a temporary blind spot in the surveillance coverage, not by disabling the systems, which would trigger alarms, but by feeding them a loop of normal activity. With the surveillance temporarily neutralized, they reached the server room entrance, a reinforced door with multiple security layers, each designed to prevent exactly the kind of unauthorized access they were attempting. Maya studied the security panel, recognizing the encryption architecture from the previous mission. She deployed the specialized access device, a custom tool developed based on Sarah's analysis of the system vulnerabilities, her final contribution to an operation she hadn't lived to complete. The security system yielded to the sophisticated intrusion, the reinforced door unlocking with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the server room hummed with the sound of advanced computing equipment, racks of servers, containing the intelligence that had cost Sarah her life to identify. Maya moved directly to the primary target, a specific server node that contained the classified research data their mission was designed to extract. She connected the specialized data extraction device, watching as it bypassed the security protocols, and began copying the encrypted files. While the data transfer proceeded, the rest of the team deployed the surveillance implants at designated locations, microscopic devices that would provide ongoing intelligence long after their departure. Each placement was precise, invisible to standard detection methods, positioned to maximize data collection without revealing their presence. The data extraction completed with a subtle tone from the device. Maya verified the integrity of the copied files, then disconnected the equipment, leaving no trace of their digital intrusion. Primary objective secured, she confirmed quietly. Secondary objectives in progress. Sullivan appeared at her side. 60 seconds to patrol, he warned, checking his tactical timepiece. Maya nodded, already focused on their extraction route. The mission had proceeded with textbook precision, a testament to both their preparation and the quality of her intelligence. But the most dangerous phase still lay ahead, the extraction through a facility now potentially aware of their presence. They regrouped at the predetermined rally point, each operator confirming their portion of the mission was complete. The surveillance implants were in place, the data package secured, the objective achieved without detection. Extraction route as planned, Maya confirmed, indicating the maintenance shaft that would take them directly to the lower level, bypassing the more heavily monitored main corridors. They moved with increased urgency, maintaining stealth discipline, but accelerating their pace. The maintenance shaft provided a direct route to their exit point, a secondary service entrance with minimal security coverage. As they approached the final exit, a security alert sounded elsewhere in the facility, not in response to their presence, but an unrelated system malfunction that triggered standard security protocols. The team froze, maintaining absolute stillness. As patrol patterns shifted in response to the alert, Maya calculated the impact on their extraction plan, quickly identifying an alternative route that would exploit the security team's focus on the alert location. She signaled the adjustment to Reeves, who acknowledged with a single nod, the silent communication of professionals adapting to changing conditions without hesitation. They diverted through a secondary maintenance corridor, moving against the flow of security personnel responding to the alert. The diversion added complexity but provided unexpected cover. The security teams were focused entirely on the alert location, creating a temporary blind spot in their coverage elsewhere. They reached the exterior access point without incident, emerging into the darkness with the same disciplined stealth that had characterized their entry. Maya secured the access point behind them, eliminating evidence of their departure, then led the team back toward the perimeter using a different route than their approach, standard procedure to avoid pattern recognition by security systems. The perimeter crossing went even more smoothly than their entry, the team now fully synchronized with Maya's techniques and timing. Once clear of the immediate security zone, they moved toward the extraction point, a different beach location, selected for its favorable underwater approach to their recovery vessel. When they reached the shoreline, Maya deployed a specialized communication device, a narrowband transmitter that signaled their extraction team without creating detectable electronic signatures. The acknowledgement came seconds later, too brief. Pulses that confirmed the recovery vessel was in position. The team prepared for the underwater extraction, transitioning back to maritime operations with practiced efficiency. As they readied their gear, Sullivan approached Maya. "Clean mission," he said quietly, professional appreciation in his voice. "Sarah would be proud." Maya paused in her preparations, the comment touching something deep beneath her professional exterior. "She deserved to see it completed," she replied. "She did," Sullivan agreed. "But she'd understand the importance of finishing it." Maya nodded once, acknowledging the truth in his words. Sarah had believed in the mission's significance, had given her life believing that the intelligence they sought could make a difference. Completing it wasn't just about honoring her memory. It was about validating her sacrifice. "Time to move," Reeves announced, checking his tactical timepiece. "Recovery window opens in 7 minutes." The team entered the water in sequence, transitioning smoothly from land to maritime operations. The underwater extraction route was less challenging than their approach, utilizing favorable currents that accelerated their progress toward the recovery point. Maya led them through the darkness with the same confident precision that had defined the entire operation, navigating by memory and intuition more than technology. When they reached the designated coordinates, the recovery vessel was waiting. Specialized submarine delivery vehicle designed for clandestine extraction. One by one, the team members transferred to the recovery vessel, securing their equipment and themselves for the return journey. Maya was the last aboard, performing a final sweep to ensure nothing was left behind that might indicate their presence. As the vessel began its silent return to the carrier, Maya secured the data package, the culmination of years of planning and sacrifice. The intelligence Sarah had identified, that she had died trying to secure, was finally in their possession. Hours later, aboard the USS Argent, the team completed their mission debrief in the Secure Operations Center. Captain Harlow reviewed their after-action report with professional appreciation. The operation had achieved all objectives without detection or casualties, the gold standard for special operations. "Exceptional execution," he concluded, addressing the assembled team. "The intelligence you've secured will have significant national security implications." The team acknowledged the praise with professional restraint, elite operators who understood that success was the expected outcome, not an exceptional achievement. As the briefing concluded, Harlow approached Maya. "Commander Foster," he said quietly, "a word in private." They moved to a secluded corner of the operations center, away from the others. "The data package has been authenticated," Harlow informed. "Her preliminary analysis confirms its significance. Sarah was right about its importance." Maya absorbed this information, her expression revealing nothing of the complex emotions beneath her professional exterior. "She usually was," she replied simply. "There's something else," Harlow continued. "Admiral Parker asked me to deliver this personally." He handed her a sealed envelope, official Navy correspondence with the highest security classification. Maya opened it, scanning the contents with practiced efficiency. Her expression changed subtly, not surprise exactly, but a kind of quiet recognition. "They're reactivating Ghost 9, she said, more statement than question. Harlow nodded. "With you as team lead. Full operational authority, specialized resource access, direct command reporting structure." Maya folded the orders carefully, tucking them into her pocket. "There's something I need to do first," she said. "Miguel Ramirez's graduation," Harlow guessed. "It's already arranged. You'll be there as the Admiral's representative." Maya's composure wavered momentarily, a brief flash of genuine emotion breaking through her professional mask. Thank you. Sir. No, Commander, Harlow replied quietly. Thank you for showing us what true operational excellence looks like. As Maya departed the operations center, Sullivan fell into step beside her in the corridor. Word spreading about what you did in there, he said. How you navigated terrain that wasn't on any chart. How you knew security patterns that weren't in any briefing. People talk, Maya replied with characteristic understatement. They do, Sullivan agreed. But more importantly, they listen. Those young operators in there, they've learned something valuable from this mission. Something about assumptions and appearances and the danger of dismissing someone based on incomplete information. Maya said nothing, but her silence acknowledged the truth in his observation. What happens now? Sullivan asked as they reached the junction where their paths would diverge. Maya considered the question, weighing how much to reveal. I keep a promise, she said simply, and then I continue the work. Sullivan nodded, understanding the layers behind her words. If you ever need experienced operators who can keep their mouths shut and follow complex instructions, he offered, you know where to find me. I do, Maya agreed, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. And I might just take you up on that. 2 weeks later, under clear Texas skies, Miguel Ramirez stood at attention as the commanding officer of the Naval Special Warfare. Training Command pinned the Trident insignia to his uniform. His face reflected both pride and solemnity, the complex emotions of someone achieving a lifelong goal while carrying the weight of personal loss. In the audience, Maya watched from the back row, her presence unannounced and unmarked on any official record. She wore civilian clothes, nothing that would draw attention or connect her to the young man receiving his insignia. When the ceremony concluded and the new SEAL operators dispersed to celebrate with family and friends, Maya approached Miguel quietly. He was standing alone for a moment, looking at his newly pinned trident with an expression that suggested he was thinking of someone who should have been there to see it. Lieutenant Ramirez, she said quietly. He turned, surprise registering on his face at being addressed by his new rank by a civilian he didn't recognize. Yes, ma'am? I served with your sister, Maya said simply. She was the finest communications specialist I ever worked with. Miguel's expression transformed surprise, giving way to intense focus. You knew Sarah? She never mentioned. She couldn't, Maya explained. The nature of our work required compartmentalization. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You were part of whatever she was doing when I was, Maya confirmed. And I wanted you to know something important. She completed her mission. What she started, what she believed was crucial, it was finished. Her work mattered. Miguel absorbed this information, his professional composure momentarily overwhelmed by the personal significance of her words. Thank you, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. That means more than you know. Maya reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object wrapped in a protective cloth. She would have wanted you to have this, she said, placing it in his hand. Miguel unwrapped it carefully, revealing a specialized communications device, not standard military issue, but a custom unit with subtle modifications that only someone with advanced training would recognize. That was hers, Maya explained. She modified it herself, improved its range and security features beyond what our engineers thought possible. She used to say that staying connected was the difference between coming home and not coming home. Miguel held the device with reverence, recognizing both its technical significance and its personal meaning. How did you know where to find me? He asked. Sarah talked about you, Maya replied simply. She was proud of you, said you had the instincts and the judgment to excel in this world. She turned to leave, her obligation fulfilled, her promise kept. Wait, Miguel called after her. I don't even know your name, or your rank, or how to contact you. Maya paused, looking back at the young operator who carried his sister's determination in his eyes. Some questions don't have answers, Lieutenant. Not answers I can give you, anyway. Are you still active? He pressed, professional curiosity overriding protocol. Still doing whatever it was you and Sarah were doing. Maya studied him for a moment, seeing echoes of her former communications specialist in his focused intelligence and quiet determination. The work continues, she said finally, and there's always need for the right kind of operator. Understanding registered in his expression, not just about her status, but about the implied possibility. How would someone apply for that kind of work? He asked carefully. They don't, Maya replied. If they're the right kind of operator, they get found. With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd with the same quiet efficiency that had defined her operational career. Behind her, Miguel Ramirez stood watching, the specialized communications device in his hand and a new understanding of his sister's legacy in his mind. As Maya reached her rental car in the parking lot, her secure phone vibrated with an incoming message. The text was brief and encrypted, displaying only after biometric verification. Ghost 9 active. Team selection. Authority granted. Operational timeline, immediate. She started the engine and pulled away from the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, leaving behind the ceremony and the brief connection to Sarah's brother. The work continued, as it always had, in the shadows where operators like her made. The impossible happened without recognition or acclaim. And if Miguel Ramirez proved to be the operator his sister believed he could be, if he showed the same intuitive understanding of communication systems and operational security that had made Sarah invaluable, then perhaps one day, he too would receive a mysterious set of orders assigning him to a unit that didn't officially exist. But that was a decision for another day. For now, Maya Foster, callsign Ghost 9, had kept her promise to her fallen teammate. She had completed their mission, ensured Sarah's sacrifice had meaning, and connected with the brother who carried her legacy. The road stretched ahead, leading back to the shadows where she operated best. The ghosts of the past would always be with her, but now they drove her forward rather than holding her back, reminders of why the work mattered, why excellence was non-negotiable, why promises had to be kept even when keeping them seemed impossible. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.